keep up with today's increasing production demands, growers are quickly realizing traditional fertilizers are coming up short. Beyond a single form of sulfur, MicroEssentials with Fusion technology delivers sulfate and elemental sulfur for season-long availability. Early in the growing season, sulfate sulfur provides young plants the nutrition needed for optimal growth. But plants dependent on sulfate sulfur alone are left vulnerable to the yield-robbing impact of leaching. But MicroEssentials is very different. Over time, microbes in the soil more efficiently convert the elemental sulfur into sulfate, continuously supplying the crop throughout the entire season and beyond. Only MicroEssentials with Fusion technology delivers season-long sulfur for steady nutrition throughout the growing cycle, resulting in higher yields and higher profitability.
Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out here. Oop. Thank you for coming out. I'm Randy Conan, one of the farm broadcasters here. Megan Turnquist on the other end over there. The rest of our crew, Don Wick is over there. You just heard Kara Hart finish up the markets. Jay Rader's somewhere around here in the back there, over there. And then Colleen Wick also is around here somewhere too this afternoon. There she is back there. We have a microphone or a couple around, so if you have questions for our market panelists, feel free. Just raise your hand. We'll get a microphone in front of you because this is all being live streamed and recorded. Let's introduce our market guests.
Yeah, wow, Randy. I'd have been called Megan Turnquist in over a year. Thanks. Well, we have a fantastic lineup of market analysts
Did I
joining
say
us.
that really?
Yeah.
Oh,
We
Megan,
have it
excuse me,
recorded.
Megan Overby.
Didn't want the people on our live stream to get confused, so
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that.
that's okay. So we have a great lineup of market analysts joining us today, and I guess we'll start right here with Randy Martinson with Martinson Ag Risk Management, Jacob Burks with Kluis Commodities, and Tommy Grisafi with Advanced Trading. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Let's just get started. We had the not the quarterly stocks, but the WASDE report, supply-demand report out on Friday. We did have basically kind of, everybody was expecting this big move, and we really didn't get it on Friday. We got it on Monday.
It depends how big you were trading. So corn traded down 12.14 and then traded up 17, but then settled up 7. And so if you didn't know we had a USDA report, we settled up 8 today and corn up 7. But we did do something constructive Friday. We punched through $5. We looked what was down there for, people leave sell orders below there. If they got stopped out, people say, I'm going to stay long corn unless it goes below 5. Well, it went below 5 for about 30 seconds, and then it rallied 20-some cents from there. So it was very constructive to the market. I think more impressive is what beans did. I think they traded down 12, up 30, and it was interesting because we are in the middle of harvest. Every year I've been here, except for last year, we're usually trading down, trending down, bunch of sad faces. This crowd's like, wow, prices are great. The government's going to send us more money. If only I had a crop, right? And so it's just a different year.
Yeah, I would, ditto that same fact. It's rarely do you see these reports act the way you expect them to. You saw a negative report result in positive, a negative report had positive results. I think that was the weak position was in the longs, and whenever the hammer dropped, you saw those guys rush to the door, get out, and the market had a very solid recovery in that day. I mean, so the Monday follow-through was significant, but having that move, come up after the first negative punch of that report as soon as the numbers came out was very positive to see, and then then we just started jumping on.
But, we'd taken so much out of the market going into that report, so it really had nowhere to go but up, I thought. So even though the numbers did come in pretty close to what we expected, it was kind of, we were selling the rumor, we bought the fact, and that kind of helped them. But I was a little disappointed we didn't see follow-through on Monday. That would have been kind of the key to kind of close out the key reversal that we saw on Friday, but maybe today will be the day that we see it and we see a little more stability come back into the market.
So on that note, really are we in a supply or demand-driven market right now?
Well, I don't think it's a demand one, because even though we've been seeing exports, and the export sales have been okay for going to China or an unknown destination. We had a little bit of corn sales take place to Colombia, but other than that, not really a lot of announced sales. I mean, our export sales have been good for corn up until now. Wheat sales have been trending okay, but we're not setting the world on fire on the export side. So I'd have to say, I'm going with the supply side, so.
I think that's always a confusing question because it's always supply and demand, just which one's pushing the market right now. I mean, I think that, going into the report, we have to remember what happened. The hurricane shut down our export market, basically, and that was, with lack of, inspections moving out, that was the fear. That was what, the trade pushed the market down even more. But right now, I mean, you come into this this September 30th or September WASDE report, and the focus was on what is the supply. They said they were going to change acres or look at the acres. So I think everybody's focus right now is on production, looking through that report, and then the next thing we'll talk about is the quarterly stocks at the end of the month.
About sums that up. You don't need me to keep adding to that, do you? I can.
You can keep rambling if you want.
I can. Well, just to add on that in a positive way is that I was at Advanced Trading Corporate, and there's 20 brokers down there that work with 600 elevators. And they they discussed for an hour about what final yield is. And I was like, Tom Grisafi, Fargo, North Dakota. I mean, if we don't have the demand, we could do without the bushels. Yeah. And so, as you'd said, the two got to hit. And so we may go back into this big bull market, or we may say, wow, the crop was smaller, but demand started to drop off. The function of the market, higher prices cure high prices, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, we can have a short crop and not explode. But if you look at the crops you guys grow, like Durham and some other things, this is pretty hot cash market. So, we're futures and options guys, but the real money this year is going to be made in the cash market, in my opinion.
The acres number, I think the big unknown is still going to be harvested acres, especially with the amount of silage that's getting cut.
Yeah, I mean, just from what I heard, coming in this morning is talked to two different dairy producer and another cattle guy that it's just taken more acres to get the tonnage they need. So it's kind of odd to me to see the USDA go up in both at the same incremental spot. It was like 600,000, basically the same amount. I think that you could see a little bit of difference there. If it amounts to anything, I don't know. But yeah, I think that you could see some less harvested acres, whether it's silage, whether it's that way, or whether it's just some abandonment that didn't get factored in.
Yeah, you look at where the acre increase came, 500,000 came in North Dakota, 100,000 I think was in South Dakota. I can't remember Minnesota, I think it was 100,000. So the acres where we saw the increase came from the driest areas. So it's unlikely all of those will go and be harvested. And I saw pictures on Twitter last night of guys out swathing corn and getting ready to bale it. So I mean, yeah, we know the abandonment's going to have to go up. I think it'll go up in spring wheat as well once we see the quarterly grain stocks or the small grain summer report at the end of September. But I do think we will see some adjustments of that number going forward.
Just real quick to add on again, and I'm not trying to trump anyone. That's our old president. The USDA may not tell us the truth for a year or two. They've been known to do that.
No.
Come on, now, don't start rumors here. But the cash market won't lie.
Right.
And I think everyone on this panel will agree. If you're, and you out there, if you're waiting for the USDA to tell us what you want to hear, your cash market will reflect all that ground that got bailed up. And Midwest brokers, they crunch numbers, but until you go to Western North Dakota and you're like, what was in that field? And they're like, corn. I'm like, where'd it go? I mean, it's just gone. And so every Midwest farmer should write every fringe acre farmer a thank you note because they're going to have a record crop, a great price, and it's because of you. Don't give yourself that much credit. It's really because of Mother Nature. And so you all were hoping it would be the other way around, that you'd have the big crop and Illinois would burn up. That's not what happened.
Well, and two, we mentioned this earlier in some of the opening statements, but we've had some hurricanes roll through down south, and that has caused some disruptions at ports. We have news this morning of more storms going through some of those already impacted areas. And so what does that mean when we talk about some of our exports? And of course, here in North Dakota, we're focused more on the PNW than down south. Where do we see all this kind of playing out, both in the long and short term?
Well, on Facebook, I saw someone post, North Dakota, hurricane-free since 1849. So I'll let the boys on the panel take care of it after that. That's my statement. I read it on the internet. I know it's true.
I saw on Twitter that they're getting up going fast. So,
yeah, so hurricane-free since 1849.
Nice. I mean, just obviously it's going to depend on the speed that they get back on track. You can keep up with whatever news source you want to look at, but depending on how fast they get going, and back to the hurricane stuff, some of the acres that we might see abandoned would be some salty corn, some of the Delta corn and stuff that wasn't, a lot of that was already harvested, but I obviously did not grow up here. I'm from the South, so I got a few more connections down in the Delta and just talking to those guys. But I think the export numbers, it's really going to be the ones that have structural damage that'll still be, from what I hear, the structural damage, the Cargill and whoever has that, but the power seems to be coming back on quicker, or not quicker, but now. So that will, set the stage for how fast we get that corn moving.
Yeah, I think it's been, a couple of weeks where no corn has been shipped PNW or out of the Gulf, but we'll make up that pretty quick. I mean, once they get things back in line, we'll be able to ship quite a bit and pick up the slowdown that we've had here. So I don't know if it'll make a big difference. At some point, we can ship a lot of grain in a short period of time if we need to.
That'll be a function of basis, though, too, right? I know, Jacob, you're along the river, or a lot closer to the river than we are, southern Wisconsin.
So our river terminals, they turned yesterday, like we were talking earlier about when's this positive basis going to turn? When are they going to fill up? When are they going to give up on paying you for your corn now and just wait till it's harvested? Our river terminals there were buying corn and then skipping over the river and taking it to the ethanol. So ethanol was the market. Clinton, Iowa was on the river and has ethanol right there, and they were the bid, they were the market. But right now we turned that on Wednesday. We're waiting for new crop corn now, and so we went from 60 over to 25 under. Yeah.
Do you see that then, Randy or Tommy, trickling up this far with the basis flipping like that quick?
Oh, yeah, I think once we get supply start to build, yeah, the basis will start to widen out. But right now, what Tommy was saying, the cash market's always going to tell us the truth. And right now, the cash market's telling us they need grain. So where's the supply that's supposed to be out there? If we've got, 1.1 billion bushels of ending stocks of old crop corn and 150 million of soybeans, why is basis at 90 over for corn and 40, 50 over on soybeans in North Dakota? That tells us that supply just isn't there, or it's under such lock and key that it's not coming out. So I think, yeah, we've got some adjustments that can be made once the harvest gets rolling. I think our basis will widen out, but it will likely rebound back again because of the supply not being there.
So on that note, I'm curious about wheat. What's the cash wheat market telling us? We did see zero basis in a lot of places right when that wheat harvest started. It has widened a little bit now, but where do we see wheat going? Because that has told its own story here, and we know a lot of that wheat got rolled up.
Go ahead, Tommy. I'll let you start this one.
This is, wheat's been fun. So I was telling Randy right before we came on stage that I didn't get any smarter this year. He's like, oh, I knew that. I said, but sitting in Mayville, North Dakota in April 1st, and then sitting there and doing meetings, and then in May 1st and talking to all the farmers and saying, when will we know we have a problem? And they said, by May 1st, I was in Maddock, North Dakota, they said, if it doesn't start raining, we have a problem. And so the wheat market had actually traded down into the problem. And it was interesting because if you trade markets or in life, if you're in sports, you call it out of position. And it was almost like the wheat market got out of position, or as you guys would know, if you had grain spoil, out of condition. But from a trading standpoint, I can't believe it sold off into the problem. And now the market, the function of the markets did what they had to do. So we went from 6 to the middle 950s. People are like, oh, why'd wheat break 75 cents? I'm like, do you realize where we started from? And then, of course, some of you, not all of you, but there's a couple of you out there are hoarders. So the TV show Hoarders comes around, and you're like, hey, I got 5 years wheat because I didn't want to pay taxes. But if you paid the taxes, that's okay, because when you died, the stepped-up basis program was going to take it all from your kids anyway. So now I get what y'all been doing. It makes sense. But wheat is, we were never going to run out of wheat. We just had to get it to a price to say uncle and get some of the wheat with the bugs and birthdays out. And I think the function of the market did that. Someone forgot to shut off the ringer.
They heard you on the live stream and are complaining.
It's my wife FaceTiming me. I mean,
Doesn't
should I answer this live?
Yeah, she can join us.
What is she doing? Gina, are you watching? I mean, maybe I butt dialed her or something. I don't know. So I just noticed something to Randy's defense. He was reading off the sign there. He was reading off the billboard. We're going to have to work on that.
Oh, he was.
Yeah,
We're
it's
gonna
not
have
his
to update
fault.
that.
Yeah, the teleprompter was like, he just went down the list. I'm like, there it is. It's not his
Once
fault.
again, if anybody has a question, raise your hand. We can get a microphone in front of you to answer questions. Okay, we've been talking some of the cash crop here. If we've got bin space, what do we sell? What do we store this year?
I think the market's telling you that once you're, wants you to store the corn, wants your beans now. I mean, if you just play it simple, I think the markets do their job, right? Just like, to go back onto the wheat. It was kind of a surprise last week when Canada came out and their stocks were higher than everybody expected, and it was kind of a hit turn. Well, the process of the wheat was higher, so the stocks built. This market right now is telling you, hey, they built some carry in the corn market. We want you to store the corn. The carry and the beans are not there. They want them now, and that's from the future side of it, I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and we got a wheat market that's inverted, so I mean, that's also telling you, even though the basis has come down a little bit, that's telling you to sell cash wheat, re-own it if you want to own it in March a little bit cheaper. But yeah, I mean, there's a little carry in the corn, and it's likely that that'll expand if we continue to see bushels or the crop get bigger. That carry will improve or increase. But right now, yeah, there's a little bit of an incentive to hold the corn and sell everything else.
I think you also wanted to use your bin space for basis improvement as well. I mean, you got to treat this as not just a cash market. This is a basis market and a futures market.
Yeah.
Okay, there's tools to get around, and there's tools to allow you to be active in that futures market beyond harvest.
There's no tool to make up for not growing the bushel. And every year we've ever been up here, all the crowd complains about is Warren Buffett and the railroad, the basis, this, that. My question to you all is, where's the bushels? How did you end up being North Dakota and you don't have crop left? And when you want to know who made all the money last year, from 10 to 15, it was China, because China bought your crop at $8.50, $9, and $9.50. And when people like us turn around and say, you want to buy calls, you want to buy call options, you want to buy spreads, you go, no, we caught a $1.50 rally during harvest. And I will say that did feel awkward to have length, and but it was still the right thing to do. So I do know one thing. If you're going to catch a bull market, you either need to have the physical bushels or you need to buy it on paper. And regardless of what you think, the market doesn't care. We're going to continue to trade dynamic for several years. In America, in Fargo, you don't feel the COVID effect right now, but if you traveled around the country, you may have a different perspective. And if you traveled around we have to change mentally and mature to the new thing. And lastly, when I first came up here, I didn't understand why these people held multiple years worth of grain. And for the young guys in the room, like these two characters right there, now you get why Grandpa was crazy and always kept a little bit back on the farm. And although Grandpa did well because he left you some acres, all right? So don't give him too hard of a time. But now we see what it's like not to have a crop and have a market. And very few people out here, except for that gentleman in the green hat, he still has a little old crop corn. But not a lot of people have bushels left.
So we focused a lot on the wheat, corn, and soybeans, was obviously when we talk futures markets and whatnot, we're going to talk about those. But Randy, you and I had this conversation a month ago about some of our specialty markets. We have dry edible bean harvest going on right now. We have a sunflower crop still out there. Canola, most of that has been taken out. There's a lot of cash opportunity in some of these other markets that typically, we're trying to contract. There's been some good harvest opportunity.
Oh, definitely. The edible bean market has had some good prices, And then right now, I mean, the prices are good. Crops aren't coming in very big right now in some of those other crops. So, and I think, this kind of builds us more for 2022, where we're going to have some pretty aggressive bids, whether it be for malting barley, whether it be for the edible beans, flax, all the lentils, pea and lentils. All of those are going to have to try to compete against acres. And then you throw in the race, with the inputs and whether it would be fuel prices going up, fertilizer going up, and the chemicals, and the availability of getting them. All of that is going to play into the mix. So yeah, I think the specialty market has a, Durham, throw that in there. You're talking about, that's going to need to buy acres. So everything is going to be out trying to buy acres up here in the northern plains.
Speak a little more on that. As far as acres, then going into next year, what are you hearing, guys? What are they thinking?
Simply put, this will be the shortest explanation I give today. Fertilizer is really expensive, so there's a lot of other things, to Randy's point, we can plant other than corn. That's it. And we have choices, edibles. I mean, you guys know what you can do. Sunflowers. There's a lot of choices up here.
I think with this late moisture too coming in, there's a lot of winter wheat that's a possibility now as opposed to just relying on the spring crop.
And we do expect to see a big increase in winter wheat acres down south. I mean, they've gotten the rain. They've got a tremendous base price for their crop insurance. So we are going to see a big increase in winter wheat acres. And remember that 2/3 of the wheat raised in the U.S. is winter wheat. 1/3 is spring wheat. So that probably could be part of the reason why we saw wheat dropping at the spring when we were trying to plant a crop, is their crop was improving. I drove through Texas, Oklahoma, and in Kansas in February, and I wouldn't have bet that that crop was going to be 20 bushels, and it came in just shy of a record. So how quick that changed, I think that kind of caught the market a little off guard too.
If we get more rains, then what would guys lean toward?
Wheat is going to be it will increase because everybody was surprised by wheat. You know, I don't want this to sound bad, but everybody's memory is only as good as 1 year. And the wheat crop was good, so we'll see an increase in wheat acres. Likely, you know, right now the way corn looks, I think we'll see a little more corn. Beans might shy down a little bit up in this area, but I do think that if you get some decent contracts out there on the specialties, you're going to see some increases in those markets as well.
I do think the weather, dictates that as far as, and I always encourage guys, don't market your corn like you should have last year, market your grain like you should have last year. So I look at that as probably that's more of an agronomy question as opposed to markets. I mean, if you're letting that dictate it, you better be actively out there selling the product or locking in your inputs and all that stuff. I do just some of the customers that I have up here, I do hear a lot more about winter wheat. I do hear a lot more about, and it's basically a lower input cost that they're looking for, and being actively selling this market, and they can lock in very, very good profits with moisture. So,
Real quick, Randy, you sell crop insurance, right?
Yep.
And so I would say the decision, what you think you're going to do on September 15th is going to look a lot different in how the economics on March 5th. I'm trying to sell crop insurance here for you.
Keep going.
All right. Your number 701 44. But what we think we're going to do up here and what happens due to Mother Nature and prices, and do you buy optional units? Do you buy enterprise? Do you buy this? There's a mathematical equation. And so when the USDA comes out with this bigger acreage number and you realize they planted corn and beans on a goat ranch, it's going to come back to haunt us, and that's, again, we'll go back, that'll be the cash market. So when we're pulling bushels out of Iowa and Minnesota, and grain usually doesn't flow that far up here, the shift, the basis, which is like water, it's going to go to where it needs to go. And it just feels really strange up here that, I don't want to say we're going to be out of grain for a few years, but with the demand for, you guys know where sunflowers are trading? Like upper 20s, right?
No, 30.
30, right? Edibles.
32 to 45.
And yeah, I mean, there's some high prices. So take edibles, for example. They had a spring insurance price at 30. And there's a chance that you can only double your spring price. I'm still selling insurance here.
No, it's okay.
I don't even sell insurance.
I'll put you on a retainer.
I'll give you my Social Security number. So I know all yours are 501s and 502s because I've opened enough accounts. I'm a 304. But there's a chance that edible prices will double and max out. So if they were $30 a bag, when we come up with the new price and we're 65 or 70 in the cash, we're going to stop at 60. Is that correct?
I think it's 2.5 times what the spring price is. So yeah, if we were
to think that that's what could possibly, that we hit a cap, that's amazing. So it just shows how short of stuff we are here. And there's a lot of choices. I can't get over that. Because you have a bin and you can put corn in it, maybe it's not the year to do it.
Yeah. Well, and again, we welcome questions in our audience. Back there.
Don Wick, long-time listener, first-time caller. Come on in.
I'm curious on the outside markets. What impact does the government's monetary policy have on what we're looking at going forward here in corn, soybeans, wheat, those kind of things?
I think that's when we defer to Tommy for it.
I have a policy that I only answer easy questions. So.
I can answer that, not because I'm completely full of it, but I spend an incredible amount of time in the bond pit at the Board of Trade, and I trade. We looked right before we came up here. I go, oh, the Dow's down 280. And so we're in that seasonal, which is odd. I didn't know the stock market could go down, but it actually is. And so we're like on our 6th or 7th day out of 8 where we're trading down, and the stock market, you'll wake up, it's up, and then it's going down. So we're going to hit a level where if we don't get people working, I noticed today, Amazon raised their minimum wage from 15 to 18. And so this is hitting close to home because we have a brand new Amazon. Who saw that new building coming in off 29? And so Amazon's trying to create 2,000 jobs in the Fargo area. I don't know where the heck they're going to get the people. I don't think they're out. I mean, they'll find them, but they may have to pay up for them. And so the American economy, if it's not going to fail, but if it struggles, it won't be because of lack of dollars, it'll be because lack of heart to work. And so inadvertently, the United States government got the minimum wage raised by competing with the private sector. And what's that going to do is it's going to lower margins for a lot of companies. So a restaurant, my favorite diner in Chicago, or not Chicago, where do I like to go, Brady? The diner, Kroll's, right? 24-hour diner, open 12 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
That's becoming America. And that's not good if you're a 24-hour diner, because we have nowhere to go get a milkshake after we go out all night anymore here in Fargo. So we're going to have to work on that.
Well, I think that's a perfect example, too, in the cattle markets right now, with what you're talking about, finding workers, finding, the biggest problem we have right now is with the packers is the chain speed and allowing them to work and keeping up with that. So.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk livestock markets. So we've had a lot of news already this week. Bring us up to speed. Who wants to start?
Oh, boy. Excuse the pun, but cattle have been getting slaughtered, in the livestock sector. And it's been, ever since that, the cattle and feed report or the cattle inventory, we had a friendly report come out and we've been, I think, down $17 in a matter of 2 weeks. In the market, close to that as far as the board is concerned. So, and it's not because the fundamentals aren't there. The fundamentals are actually a little bit friendly on the cattle side, where we've got tighter supplies, or which will soon be the expectation of tighter supplies. The only negative we got is seasonal, when we normally see an increase in calves coming to town now because of calves coming off of pasture. But we did have a little bit of an update today. I'm friendly the cattle market. I think it's got some room to move up, but it's going to struggle because of the economy and because of the chain speeds, and that's one of the issues we got to try to work through.
We're going to see in the next year the fundamentals of the available cattle are going to change a lot.
Yes.
And that's hard to measure right now with with cow slaughters up, everything's headed that direction for longer term. Back to the economics of it, if the market was moving higher, we had box beef screaming higher, maxed out, and now we're on our way back down, and this market was 14 of the last 16 days negative. Yeah. And the markets react, they can stay irrational a lot more than you can say solvent. The weak position in the cattle market this week was the longs. All of a sudden we've been going down, and it took probably one of the most negative news events to create a positive result.
Did you start that fire?
I did not start the fire. I might have put it on my Twitter. I might have retweeted it. But I was, you watch that come in, and all of a sudden they say, hey, we're going to be back up tomorrow, and we'll be killing tomorrow. And there we go. We recovered quickly. So these markets, are looking for a news event, but it may not react the way that the market
and
should.
Overreacting to any news event.
I was going to say, talk about overreacting, because I heard some guys telling me that, well, the roof caved in, it was going to be months before they were going to get it back up and walking. It's going to be another Holcomb, Kansas thing, but it's all rumor. And that they always would qualify, but it's all rumor.
Well, I learned a new term, is a clickbait. I thought my wife was making fun of me, calling me names, but it's just what can be seen fastest, what can be seen as the biggest, worst problem we can have, to get the biggest knee-jerk reaction, sell the most ads.
Yeah, no, and again, we welcome our questions, so just flag Don or one of our teammates down, and they'll get you the microphone.
I want to go back and talk about, we've got a quarterly stocks report coming up here at the end of the month, plus the wheat in all positions. Are we leaning bullish, bearish going into that? How do we position in front of that?
I'll let Randy have that one, because we were talking about it earlier. Yeah.
Last year at this time, we saw that report come in and kind of help be the catalyst that spiked our markets up, and part of it was because of seeing a lot lower stocks than anticipated. Part of it, lower test weights, whatever it was, but the crop just wasn't there. Right now, the cash market's kind of giving us that same signal, is that the crop's not there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see stocks come in a little bit lower than anticipations, or lower than, wheat, that one I don't know. So I don't think we'll see much change in the stocks as far as wheat is concerned. I think it'll be more on the corn side that we'll see the lower stocks.
We're definitely dealing with less stuff, and I'm not too big of a conspiracy theorist, but sometimes, you know. But there's a group of people who say the USDA's they're like, the way they're coming out with the numbers is different than the USDA and past administrations. So it's interesting because we've had several limit up moves, but we're not at those prices a few days later. So we may go limit up, trade up that night, but like a week or two later, we backfill into a level again. So at 11 o'clock on that day, what we do versus where we are at 11 o'clock the next Wednesday, or assuming it came out on Friday, right? Give it 3-4 days, let it digest, check your cash markets, because whatever that hand does in Chicago, I tell every group I speak to up here, it's not called the North Dakota Board of Trade. The closest thing you have to that is the Minneapolis Grain Exchange. So we're going to represent Chicago bushels for a while, which we have a lot. I live in Fargo and Valparaiso, Indiana, which you guys just whooped our butt last Saturday. Thank you very much. But we got paid $250,000 for you to beat us, so hope you feel good about yourselves. But we have a record crop in Valparaiso, Indiana. I have growers who have 20 irrigators, and they ran for one day, and that means the bushels are on the way in the Midwest.
Yeah. I would ditto the fact it's hard to look out your window and market grain, right? So coming up here and talking to people and listening to them talk about how they think the USDA's yields will come down, I've been on the phone all week with people that think they got to raise it 2 or 3 bushels. You know, the text message from a guy this morning was, I said, how are yields? Big, ... real big. You know, and like he's 20 bushels over. That's Southern Mill, Missouri. So, you know, it's like you said, it's Chicago. You got to have the basis will handle the water situation. It'll go and it'll balance everything out. But as far as, you know, from a national yield perspective, remember we cut 4 bushels off. You know, and now we've added a few back on. It's not out of the question to see in the future to see them add more bushels back onto that. But I guess to go back to the actual question was about the stocks, and I don't see anything changing. I will say that it's really, really hard, conspiracy theory or not, for the USDA to do a great job of counting bushels whenever the bushels are in the farmer's hands more often. They're not all going to town, and they're not all going to one spot in commercial units. There's on-farm storage, there's everything else.
Well, that's the thing, too. We've added so much more on-farm storage over the last 5-10 years that I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if USDA knows how to handle that.
Go ahead.
Not myself, but in advance, we put out these maps per state, and every firm does it probably, but it's interesting to see, I don't want to quote the number, but the state of Illinois is going to produce way more bushels than they have bins for, but they'll pile it up, right? North Dakota is not going to produce nearly enough bushels for how many bins we have, and that's unusual around here. And so it has added to, Randy, you know, it's added a twist that as you as farmers and us as educators and you guys on the network who are educators and reporters, as we get the story out there, we're all more interconnected. And so with social media, when they're telling the truth, there's some fibers on there. But when you find out the information, if you talk to an old timer here, you know, the stock market didn't know John F. Kennedy was shot for like 30 minutes after it happened, or 12 minutes. I mean, my wife called me here today, and the whole world knows it already happened. It's out there. I can't take it back. So it's like toothpaste. You're not getting it back in the tube. And so information's traveling and disseminating much faster rate. And so you all here up here aren't as disconnected as you think from Chicago, because I'll go to Fargo Airport in a few days, and I'll land in O'Hare an hour later, and my wife will pick me up, and it's like I went to a different world. But with the internet, it's pretty amazing how we're all interconnected. And so you don't have to act all shucks, or, you know, you grew up in an all shucks area, right? And we're all shucks up here. You're a lot smarter than, you know you're smart. You're just playing, what do they do in the South, where they lure you in, like, you know what I'm talking about? My Southern customers do that to
I get
me.
made fun of in the
They all
in the
shucks
South
me.
enough.
They pretend like they understand what I'm doing, and then they're like, yeah, buy me 50. I'm like,
Little
what
hustle.
the heck? I just, you know.
I'll be a little y'all hustling, you know.
Yeah,
so there you go.
yeah, us Northerners, we're hustling. So when you talk about Northerners, we're all the way up there, next stop Canada. But give yourself more credit, and some of you, young and old, this will be the greatest opportunity of your life. Don't mess it up.
We have a question in the back.
So the folks at the Farm Network know about this, and I encourage a lot of people to follow your commodity groups. U.S. Wheat Associates does a good job. They're market analysts, and at the beginning of the month, the Farm Progress Survey came out, which only surveyed about 740 farmers, so that's not all of them by any means. And we're talking about the future acreage estimates for 2022, and it's expected that all the major crops, soybeans, corn, spring wheat, and winter wheat, are going to go up. So one, where is that going to come from? Where's that land coming from? But also from your guys' perspective, how does that impact you guys? I mean, if we're going to have more acres on more crops, isn't that going to bring our price down? So now I need to start talking with you guys about what to do next.
You want me to write my answer and just give it to you like a secret? Real quick, it's not just America who's getting to grow crops at better prices. The whole world's getting better prices. Countries that shouldn't be growing wheat are going to grow wheat next year if this keeps up, because they grow it everywhere. So we will, if I'm on this stage, God willing, 3 years from now, we could be at horrible prices. And that's the function of the job. And as markets go up, more technology comes out, and you all are real good at using technology. You couldn't farm without it up here. And so we're going to go through another boom-bust cycle, but we're on the boom right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, markets are very cyclical. They're going to go up and they're going to go down. And right now, yeah, we're seeing the upside of it. Just because we add acres doesn't mean we're adding bushels either, because, the weather has an impact, and, there's other factors that'll have to go into play with that, kind of like what you were saying. And with wheat and with corn and soybeans, all of them increasing, that just means we were going to annex Canada in, to add acres. We'll just take it from some other market, and a lot of the specialties will have to give up something if they don't come to the table and offer decent contracts. So it's just, it'll be the function of the market to buy acres, and that's what it needs to do.
I think that this year is going to be hard. I was surprised when we didn't add as many acres than we did. First of all, prevent plant acres were a lot lower this year than they've been in the last, and y'all know about this up here more than I do. So something's got to give it up, whether it's cotton in the south, whether it's some of the other smaller grains. But I would say that all that we've talked about here is what acres are going to do is exactly what you should be looking at if you plan on farming next year or the year after that. What are you doing with $5 corn prices? I mean, twice in the last 10, 15 years we've been above $5 during this time of harvest. So rarely are we up here in these levels. And so when you look out at 22 and 23, that's something that you should, I feel like, that a producer that's planning on growing crops next year should look at doing something. If you're looking at these higher input costs and stuff, that's something that you should be actively looking at that. But as far as what acres are going to do, I do not disagree that they're going to go higher. But you also go look at Ukraine, go look at South America, go look, everybody's is going higher. Now they got to produce the crop, and you can't just run out and sell everything because you think it's going to go tanking. That's not what I'm saying. But I can say that production will go up. Production will go up globally.
And we have a question down here.
Sorry if I missed this earlier because I was doing market stuff up there. How many of your clients forward contracted their harvested crop for this year?
I could say on average we're probably 50 to 60% sold with our customers, and I have no problem saying that we were early doing it too. As we saw China coming in to buy, and we saw market opportunities give us profitability, we were more aggressive than we wanted to be. However, we also had used tools in the marketplace to put ourselves in an upward position. So marketed, cash contracted, I would say 50 to 60% on average across a whole large group of people.
Yeah, pretty much the same.
One thing that helped myself by accident, and without mentioning names, it's no one up here, but there was a firm up here who got massively aggressively sold. Not only for last year when we were going up, because we had never been at that level, and I'm not teasing you, I respect you, but because we've never been there doesn't mean we're not going to a new level. And so they got massively sold for the 20 crop and very aggressively for the 21 crop. And they invited me to a meeting, and they invited you guys there too, but I showed up, you guys didn't. Okay. So, but it was not a nice meeting because I was in a room full of people who were very upset. And I told them two things. You need a lawyer and a priest. Because from where they were sold at, and I went home and told every client I had about it, if you have aggressively sold bushels for 21, we need to talk. Because there's like the movie The Big Short. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. There's literally a Big Short happening, and you know what I'm talking about now.
I do.
You wipe that smile off your face, all right?
That it
And
wasn't
so
there.
that, by accident, and this young man was at my house when I got that email, holy cow, do you know what this is going to do? And that was the beginning of the big blow up. And so when you sell a call a year in advance for 20 cents or 30 cents, and you can never get more than 30 cents, that call went that call went $5 above against people. So there are people in North Dakota who sold something, who collected $1,500 in premium, who had a position this summer that was 25 grand against them, okay? And there was professionals who helped them do that. Sometimes free is too expensive. They actually paid for this advice. So when we saw that trade happen, and you saw it too, I said, you cannot be doing this we were going into record low moisture. So by accident, again, like sitting in Mayville and seeing the grass burnt, I'm like, wow, look what's going to happen. The big short's going to happen. And it did. And so the only reason I wasn't more aggressively sold, which we should have been with prices, was because I knew a big group of people already were and they didn't know how to get out of it. And if you've ever been in that situation where you have something on and you can't get out, it's not a pleasant feeling.
Are there any other good marketing lessons or tips that you'd take away from the upward and kind of downward of the markets from the last few months? Anything that would really help people here in the audience or people tuning in online?
You want me to go at it?
Yeah, you start.
You need to be able to market in a bull market, a bear market, and a pandemic. And that's not an equation that if I didn't go to college, but for you, who went to NDSU, right? Did they teach you how to market in a pandemic at the NDSU Business College? No, because it hadn't happened before. But just because it hadn't happened before didn't mean it didn't happen last year. So anyone who's going broke because of who got elected or who did this or who did that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And there's a big lesson to be learned, and unfortunately, some people paid a dear price for it. So your ability to be flexible and pivot and admit you're wrong is still an honorable thing.
I would say, piggyback onto that is just don't market from your backyard. You're right. I mean, we're in a global market. It's not just the U.S. against China against South America. You have to pay attention to what's going on and production-wise all across the world. And South America is going to become one of the biggest competitors we've got. They're going to increase acres big time. And it's not because they're tearing up rainforests, it's because they're doing away with their livestock industry and they're bringing in pastures into production. So it's turning over quicker. So they're going to be a big force to deal with. But I'd say don't look in your backyard. Market for what the world's telling us.
Absolutely. I said it earlier, don't market grain this year like you should have last year. The worst thing I'd see is somebody say, I'm not going to sell any grain now because last year when I sold it, the market went to $6.50 corn and $8, $9 bean, wheat and so on. My point is if you're doing it yourself, small incremental sales, making profit, covering your cost, then that's a great well. If you're working with someone that helps you, make sure they understand what risk management is. Just like he's talking about, somebody that sold options. It's not the worst thing in the world, ever. How are you managing that option? Are you then putting something above it to help her? So there's great tools out there, whether you're using the tools at the elevator, whether you got you a farm marketer, whether you're using a broker in Chicago, whoever. There's great tools out there, but if they don't understand what your risk is and help you manage your risk on your operation, you've got the wrong person hired.
So I guess we have just a couple minutes left here before we start to wrap things up. But my final question for you all would be, do you think we have more missed marketing opportunities? Are there still plenty to come as we reflect on 2021 and look into 2022?
I think there's marketing opportunities now.
All the time.
I mean, I think there's some marketing opportunities now. So do we have, if you're flexible in the marketplace, there's always an opportunity. So I would say there's more to come.
We're still the best in the world at what we do. I mean, some of us have been hard on, South America, although they're pretty good. this is still the greatest place in the world to farm. And what we can do with federal crop insurance, again, gives you guys an advantage that other countries don't have.
Oh, I agree. I can't
Good
add to
job,
that.
crop
Well,
insurance.
they
That's
said.
Randy Martinson, Martinson crop insurance. Shameless. Shameless.
You know,
I hope I get a cheese curds or something after this. Jeez.
maybe even a steak.
All right.
Biggest thing what I hear you say too is we need to have a marketing plan in place and use the marketing plan.
And be flexible, I mean, but then use the tools that are there to, you know, that are developed and tested to help you, whether it be, you know, call options or, you know, futures or whatever, again, your risk tolerance is able to handle.
Randy, Mike Tyson always says everyone's got a plan until I punch him right in the face.
True.
I'll end it with that.
I do think that that you got to, you know, plan your trade and trade the plan, right? So I don't think that you can come in here and write down every single sell you want. I think you have to be flexible with your plan. But you know, what we always tell everybody is if you're making the profitable sell, have your next sell in place. You cannot get filled. You can never make a sell if you don't have it in. And so that's the main thing, is actually putting an order in, whether it's at the elevator or the brokerage, whatever. You cannot get filled. Don't tell me to call you when it looks good. I'm so tired of hearing that. I'm on the phone now. It's going to look good if it gets to here. Let's put the order in.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. Thanks everybody for coming, and for those who tuned in on the live stream, again, we have Randy Martinson, Jacob Burks, and Tommy Grisafi. Let's give them a round of applause.
Got some hats over there in the corners. Pick up a hat on the way out. So thank you all for coming.